Okay everyone, so I'm going to go into some more advanced techniques with these Bezier curves. What I'm going to do is grab hold of this here. As you know from our last little tutorial, you could slide this cylinder along the curve quite nicely. It'll straighten up at the end of it, and it will sort of straighten up whichever end, and it'll curve around the actual curve because we link them together using this modifier, and it's all perfectly fine, which is great. Now the problem is, what if you need to go, what if you actually want to move this cylinder, actually move it? Because you see what happens, it starts to distort when you move it around from the curve because it's so incompletely linked into this. Okay, you can fix that, don't worry about it, yeah? What you need to do though first is you've got to make sure that this here is exactly the shape that you want it. It's the only sort of little caveat that you have to deal with on this. This needs to be the correct shape. So make sure that it's the correct length and size before you begin this start. Okay, same with this as well. What we need to do is we need to increase the length of this so it covers the whole curve. I'm not going to be too concise with my measurements, but you know, there we go, that'll do. It kind of bends around there, not a problem. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to obviously line it up with center so it's all together, but with Alt and G. And now we've got this curve around a very long, but how do I make the curve and the cylinder move together without getting distorted? Because obviously if you built it, say, a part for an object and you want it to move somewhere, that's going to be a pain in the bum, really. Let's fix that. It's dead simple to fix this. Up here we got our scene collection, and there is our curve. All I need to do is press shift and drag it into the cylinder, and now it is basically a child of the actual cylinder. And what I can do now is move the cylinder around, and the actual curve moves with it. The actual curve is now inside the cylinder, and they're stuck together. They're not going to morph or distort anymore. I should even be able to rotate it, and it'll quite happily do it without losing anything. So it's there now and it's perfect. So obviously that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to be able to move it around properly. Okay, there we go. We can actually move up through all dimensions. We can move it around, and it's locked into that shape now. It's exactly what we want. We can even, obviously, if we want to return it to center, we can return all the rotation back as well if we didn't want all of that going on. There we go. It's back to where it needs to be. Now, the thing is, though, what happens now is when we change the scaling on this will also now begin to change the scale, and this is something very important, of the curve. So now that the curve and the cylinder are not independent of each other, that curve will expand based upon the size of the cylinder. And the other problem is it's very difficult now to go back in and specifically manipulate it. It's not impossible, but it becomes a little bit more difficult, but not, not completely so. But there we go. So as you can see, you can, and well, actually, it kind of works rather well. But as you can see, as you pull this, it starts to lose itself. So this is why I said you've got to make sure that you're happy with it to begin with, because otherwise your curve extrudes outwards, but your cylinder stays the same, and then you're going to have a bit of a time fixing them up again. If I go back in again and I start trying to expand it along the X and Y, and as you can see, the actual curve itself expands in relation to it. So you've got to make sure your curve is exactly where you wanted it to be to begin with, otherwise it'll start to show. But there we go, that's how simple that is. It's quite a nice little technique, as you can see. All I've done is I've made the curve a child of the cylinder so that it behaves with it. They actually share attributes, they share sizes. This still has its own personal attributes and still behave in its own way, but unfortunately then you get little problems like this going on where it'll expand too far out, it'll scale with it, and if you manipulate it separately, you will start to have a few problems. So make sure you've already decided, make sure you've got everything right before you start playing around with it. Okay, next thing I'm going to go on to then is I'm going to actually start playing around with making different shapes and showing you how you can actually use, say, things like cylinders around these curves to come up with more advanced designs. Okay then, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you more clever tricks with these Bezier curves. So if I get myself a cube, and I'm going to give it a kind of bricky feel. So there we go, a brick. And I'm going to just duplicate the brick in a second. So I'm going to create a second version of it. Okay, doesn't really matter where this is at the moment. In fact, I could completely throw that away, but I'll leave that one where it is for now. And I'm going to add my curve in. And there we go, we've got a little curve now. What am I going to do with that? Well, here's the clever part. Okay, I'm going to actually, better move that out of the way so I can sculpt this curve properly. I'm going to go into edit mode. And of course, I've got my little handles that I need to play with here. So, how am I going to do this? I need to let me find the right one. This is always the problem, it's finding the right actual one, the right little handle. So if I move this up to here, and then I'm going to just extrude it outwards on the x-axis to here. Okay, and now I've just got something that's a bit more balanced. I'm going to get this one across to here. I'm going to actually press N so I can get an exact position. So that I want that one at -2. I want this one to be at 1 and 0 for the X. I want this one in the middle here. I want that to be at 2 and 0. Okay, and now I've started to get a nice little curve. Obviously, what I need to do now is I need to really sort of select this handle here and get it. Basically, I'm trying to create something that's more like a natural curvature. I'll go for 0.8 on that one. That one there, let's have a think. If that one's 1 and 0.8, I want that to be -1. 0.8 as well. Yep, okay, there we go. I've got something that's kind of more of a curve now. It's not perfect, but that's not what I'm worrying about right now, so don't worry about that. I'm going to just snap the cursor to selected. I'm going to then head into here. I'm going to tab. I'm going to make sure that my object's origin is at the cursor so that it's just there nicely. Okay, now these bricks. What am I going to do with these bricks? Well, here's the clever part of this. Now, I've made this spare one so I can make more of them later on of the exact same dimensions. I'm going to go into edit mode of this, and I'm going to select just one of the sides. And I'm going to do the snap to cursor again. And then I'm going to do the object and set its origin to that 3D cursor. And what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to head it over to this side just for a second. Okay, I'm then going to head into add modifier and a curve. I'm going to make this the actual curve's point of origin. Now, as you can see, at the moment, it's kind of following the curve nicely. It's not really an issue, yeah? Which is what I wanted it to do. And then we kind of want it to be online with this, so I'll probably need to go back into... let me have a think. Ah, yeah, of course. I need to Alt-G that. Alt-G that. There we go. Right, there we go. And as you can see, it curves around the bend. You'll notice that the two outer edges stay perfectly parallel, whereas the ones on the inside kind of taper inwards. Now that's the actual effect that I genuinely wanted on this one. So what about this other brick I created? Well, I'm going to show you now what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to go into edit mode for this one, and I'm also actually I need to set these back to where they should be. Gotta get them right, that's the only thing. Right, okay, so it's back where I want it to be. Back into edit mode. I'm going to select a side, and then again I'm going to do that mesh, snap, cursor to selected, back in, object, set origin to cursor, and now I've got this. I'm going to pop that in the center again by Alt and G. Okay, and now that's where I want it to be. I'm just going to move this out of the way. I'm going to Control C, Control V to create another one. And now what you've got is I've got 2 bricks with the actual origin point in the same place. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add a modifier, add the curvature, and then now look what's happening here. Now look very carefully at this. You'll see that both of these bricks perfectly match each other as they curve. And when we get to kind of this point here, you'll notice they kind of meet up with each other rather nicely. In fact, if I actually decided to really, I should be able to actually shrink the size of this down right a lot. And then I should be able to slide this one along to create like this. Okay. Then, well, no prizes for guessing what I'm going to do for this one now. I'll put that one on the curve, and I'm going to do the same thing. And you'll see that they really do fit together nicely. Okay, what I've basically got here is a set of curves that are joining together rather well, rather snugly. What I'm trying to actually do here is show you, if you haven't worked it out by now, but I could actually make a kind of semi-curved wall. So obviously you see brick walls or stone walls that follow a curvature. They're not curved bricks, they're actually straight bricks that are put along a curve. Now what you would get doing this kind of one, if you've got your actual curve here, perfect, you'd actually get a perfectly forming cube if you used all the same size bricks. And even if you didn't, as long as some of the major actual grid lines are the same, it should work. So really you should be, really definitely going for this. It will actually be a good idea. You can create the brick effect. Problem is, alright, if you're going for high detail, high rendering, like massive detail, doing it this way is fine. In fact, I could copy a few of these bricks to death now, because actually now that I've got it, I could very quickly just do the copy paste job. Copy these bricks individuals. As you can see, I can make a copy, and because they're already assigned to the curve, the only problem is you've got to watch out for it copying the curve by accident, which I don't want. Just want the actual brick, not the curve. Let me try that again. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay. Anyway, so there we go. We're actually getting these. If you accidentally get too many of these, you can just delete them. And then just reapply these to the correct. If you've accidentally got them in the wrong place, there we go. See? And when you reapply them, it's fine. Yeah, you will end up accidentally copying the curve now and then. But there we go. You can see I've got a single curve and the bricks coming along. I can do another one over here because, obviously this is me pretending to actually put mortar on these things. There's me just resetting the... Right, so there you go. As you can see, it's slowly building up and you've got this brick and mortar effect, really. Although, again, that's a lot of memory to build anything this complex. You'll have trouble, particularly if you were building an entire full-scale building, of shrinking this down enough into a proper... into a computer game or something, particularly something like I like to use 6 Skylines, because that model would just be far too complex. It just would be too much. So here's our next little trick. Let's not go for so much. Yeah, this is just far too much. I'm just going to uncouple this so I can show you the next little idea that I would have. So let's say I thought my wall would be about 5 meters long in a curve. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over into edit mode, and I'm just going to cut this up into nice proportions. So 1, 2, 3, and there we go. I've got a 4 brick long. I could cut this further up if I wanted to, if I needed to, but I'm going to leave it like that for now. Although if I could, again, I could go and really sort of go nuts and actually get the mortar joints in here if I wanted to. You just got to spend a bit of time measuring, that's the only problem. You don't want to make it irregular. I really probably would go full hog and put all the individual mortar in if I had time and energy, but I'm not going to do that because I'm not insane. Well, I am insane, but there we go. So we got this now, and we've added the cuts into it, and the same logic applies. When I put it on here, as you can see, it follows the curve again. that actually works to the curve. And if you look very closely, you do actually kind of get that other cut where I've put my mortar joints in. So it's a slight curve again. You can see it in edit mode perfectly well. And again, what you've got there is you've got a nice regular curve. If you took your time, this would be a really easy way to do, say, a fountain, because you could build around the fountain shape. Or, you know, if you fancy doing yourself a TARDIS console, why wouldn't you? You could also do it like that way as well. And that's just my advanced little tricks for doing my curvature. Again, there's loads of extra tips and tricks to learn about, and I will try and put them all on there, but I think that's probably one of the more useful ones that I can think of right now. Okay, if you like what I'm doing here, please like and subscribe, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.